Dr. Meeker, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you on here. It's only taken 5 years, but
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here.
oh man, awesome. What a cool opportunity. And talking to you from your kitchen. You have a lovely kitchen. I can see it in the background.
Thank you. And I always feel kind of badly using my kitchen, but the lighting is best here. And I figured,
Right.
you know what? Who cares? This is where I live my life. I have a studio with a microphone in my study, and I go, this is just easier. So
Yeah, I hear you. No, it's perfect. The funny thing too, what I've learned about being in the dad space over the past 5 years now is that sort of the more imperfect, the better. Like the
yeah,
guys necessarily aren't into the highlight reel. They like,
I agree.
yeah, imperfection. So I would love to get started with, I know quite a bit about your childhood and about your upbringing and as far as the relationship with your own father.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to start there just to give us some context and color.
Sure. I grew up with, we have 4 kids in my family. I was the oldest daughter. My dad was a physician. He was a pathologist, grew up outside of Boston. And as a matter of fact, my dad never really encouraged me to go to medical school. We had a great relationship. My dad was very quiet. He wasn't perfect, battled some depression things, but I always knew growing up that my dad was my greatest fan and always had my back. And I don't know that he told me that, but I just knew it from the way the things he did. He always made us go on fishing trips as a family in the summer. And at 15, 16, I was like, oh, this is terrible. This is horrible. You're the worst dad. And now I'm so grateful he did it. So he was very strict, but he was very kind and quiet.
Mhm.
I worked with a friend of his when I was 16 at a hospital, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to med school. Just that's the way it's going to be. And so I went to college, and I think I wrote about it in my father-daughter book about the fact that, my first round, I didn't get into medical school. And at 21, I thought, my life's over. It's over. And I heard my dad talking to a friend on the phone. And I heard him say my name, and I thought, this is funny. And he said, after I'd gotten all these rejections, yep, my daughter Meg is going to medical school in the next year or two. And I thought, well, what's going on? Either he knows something I don't know, or he's paid somebody off. I don't know. But, and then sure enough, a year later, I went to med school. And so my dad's words had a lot of power. My dad passed away several years ago, and I miss him like crazy. He had dementia, but, he really influenced the trajectory of my life incredibly. And, he was never trained as he wasn't a psychologist. He hadn't, been to a lot of parent support groups. He got the big stuff right. So what I really want to encourage dads to do is just focus on getting the big stuff right, because
Mhm.
that's what your kids really want. And that's what my dad gave me.
Yeah, I'm reflecting. I'm reflecting upon a story that you shared on another podcast, and that is your dad every now and again would take you into work with him on Saturdays, and
Good.
you just really appreciated that. I mean, I'm thinking back to like a little bitty kid, in the office, like, oh my gosh, could it be boring? Do I want to claw my eyes out being in my dad's workplace? But you really appreciated it.
You do. And I wanted to tell dads a couple of things. When I was 8 years old, probably second grade, my dad on Saturday mornings would take me in to work with him, and I'd sit at his desk, and I, just sort of spin in that chair. And then afterwards, he worked at Mass General Hospital, and afterwards we would go out and we would have pastries, and I'd have hot chocolate. And he probably only did it 5 times, but it felt to me that he did it every single Saturday, because in a child's mind, the time that you spend with your kids just expands. And so those were incredible memories for me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I remember you saying a statement along the lines of, "I just really appreciated being a part of his world."
Yeah,
In any
exactly.
way, yeah, in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And so even just the fact that he brought me into his work,
Yeah.
he didn't have to pump me up with, now you could do this, and I believe in you. And he just showed me that I could be part of his world. He respected me and wanted me to be with him. and that's it. And that's all it really takes, is just to
Mhm.
bring your kids into your world.
Yeah, I love that. That is so cool. Now I wanna fast forward to a funny story, and
Okay.
that is, the first time you met eyes with the man you're married to now.
Yeah.
It's it's a cool story. Would you mind
Yeah.
sharing it?
Well, it is kind of funny. I went to medical school with my in Cincinnati. My brother was there,
Mhm.
and I was actually engaged to somebody, and I went off, and my brother helped me move in to my new apartment, and he brought with him his best friend, who's now my husband. And oh, this guy's going to think I'm so fickle. I was. But anyway, I had an engagement ring from another guy on. And as soon as I saw my husband walking down towards me, I took my engagement ring off, and that was that. And 6 months later, we were married. And, but it just was one of those moments. And I called this other poor guy and said, "Hey, sorry, things are off. We've been engaged for 2 years." But, it really was kind of love at first sight. And we've been married 39 years now. So, and he was a big inspiration in my writing of this book as well, raising our daughters.
That's awesome. So I guess the ring obviously wasn't too hard to get off, it just probably slipped right off and
No,
yeah.
and unfortunately, I had to send it back.
Right.
So anyway, and I shouldn't say unfortunately, but that's what you do. So yeah, but
Yeah.
no regrets there at all.
So I appreciate you sharing that story. And so you have 3 daughters, you have 1 son. You've written
Correct.
books on, the hero book and also Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. Do you have a passion or and I hate to call it a preference, but is there a soft spot in your heart for dads of daughters or dads of sons?
Oh, absolutely. I have a soft spot in my heart for dads,
Mm,
period. And it's grown over the past 5 or 6 or 7 years. And I think part of that's because of raising a son, but part of my soft spot for dads with daughters is that I know what my father meant to me. And as I talked to other women, in which I did interviewed a lot for writing the book Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, adult women, had one of two responses immediately when I asked them if they talk about their dads. They either were thrilled to talk about their dads and they went on and on and on about their dads, or they'd say, "Absolutely not, I can't." So, in other words, there was either tremendous love and gratitude or tremendous pain, which showed me that dads are so integral and so huge in kids' lives. But we're living in a culture that is demeaning dads. It's telling dads they're not important, they're not necessary. Women can do it all, single moms can do it all, and that not only men are not important, but fathers in particular. And I think that that's just grown worse and worse and worse over the past years. So, as a pediatrician, I felt if I really want to help kids, I got to encourage their dads, because their dads are so huge in their lives, but they're not being told that by anybody.
don't you think it's kind of the polar opposite of exactly what you're saying, which is not only are they not important, but it seems like they're kind of made out to be we're sort of made out to be morons. We're made fun
Oh, oh,
of in
oh, for sure,
society.
for sure. I mean, look at the advertisements. Try to
Right.
find an that shows men as strong or dads as wise. Usually you have to be corrected by a snarky 11-year-old
Mhm.
on television. You can find beautiful Mother's Day cards, but if you find a Father's Day card, it's it kind of difficult. But you're absolutely right. Everything on television, videos, movies says to people, dads just don't get it. So, do the best you can, but you are living with a moron who doesn't understand you. He doesn't understand boys, doesn't understand girls. So mom is really the one who's got to take the lead here and make sure life at home is good.
Yeah, it's sad when you see that stuff because I think especially this generation of fathers, I think we're seeing a generation of fathers that are so hungry
Yeah.
to really be involved, to really engage. We want to almost step out of that just provider role, and we want to be in these kids' lives.
Mhm.
And that's before I get to some strategies of what that looks like. I'm so curious to really understand what was it in you that, okay, you're a pediatrician, practicing physician. What was it in you that you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to start writing books on this.
Yeah. Well, I wrote the book a while ago. That's a great question. I really just kind of happened on it. Well, I kind of happened on it. And this is, many, many years ago, I learned if I really want to do something for kids, I had to help their parents, because parents had the power in their lives. And one of the things that I was noticing really over the past 15 years is that a lot of kids, say 10 and older, were coming in with a lot of distress, anxiety, school issues, eating disorders, so on and so forth. It didn't really matter. But that the girls who had dads involved in their lives were doing a lot better. They were getting over whatever they had a lot better. So I was experiencing that behind closed doors, and yet in the public eye, I was seeing, the damage done to dads and how they're marginalizing dads. I go, wait a minute, there's an enormous disconnect here. Why doesn't somebody say something? So I just started to write about the importance of fathers in daughters' lives, because nobody was doing it. And if you look at the data on how a dad changes a kid's life, daughter or son, it's overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming that kids with a dad in the home, we're not talking about dads with a PhD in psychology, but kids with a dad in the home are less depressed, less anxious, less likely to get into drugs, sex, and alcohol, more likely to finish high school, go on to college, you name it, go down the list. And yet, and the data is rock solid. And yet we're living in a time where we're so hyper focused on mothers and championing women that we're demeaning dads. And I thought, why can't you champion both? But in our very divisive culture, you just kind of don't do that. So, that's really why I just started, because I thought, why doesn't anybody talk about it? The other thing that was interesting too, is that there weren't any women talking about it. Men would come out and say, men are being marginalized and we need back in. Maybe men would listen to them, but women wouldn't listen to them. But when I come out and I start talking to mothers about why they need to speak differently to their husbands and why they need to help their ex-husbands have a better relationship with their kids, they'll listen. They'll listen more than they would by a man. I mean, a man can't go to them and say, you need to start talking differently to your ex-husband. She'll go, yeah, right. So, that's a lot of what I do. So I've been in kind of a unique position. And then the book became so popular, it just kept going.
Did you ever think in your wildest dreams that it would become as big as it
No,
has?
no, not at all.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be a writer,
Mm.
honestly and truly. I was a pediatrician going on life, giving some talks about, parenting and this kind of a thing. And a publisher literally just asked me to write a book. And then I wrote Strong Fathers, and it just hit. And then I've written since then, and it just keeps snowballing. So it's fun. I feel it's a great blessing, and I feel very, very grateful to have a job I love to do.
And thank you very much for that work. It definitely helps a lot. You talk a lot about too, fear-based parenting.
Yes.
And like I said, this generation of fathers, I think these guys are super hungry. They're hungry to do it right. And the good news is we have a plethora of information out there that we can choose from. The bad news is we have a plethora of information that we can choose from
Yeah,
out there.
exactly.
So where do you think the modern man, the modern dad needs to start?
Well, I think, first of all, he needs to start with understanding, and this is hard to do, but really convincing himself and knowing he's huge in his kids' lives. You have to start at the beginning, because he has been told for years and years and years he's not necessary. It's all about mom. He just needs to, earn some money and keep life sort of simple at home. And if somebody needs him to say something, then they'll pull him in and say, hey, dad. So I think it's really important for dads, if they can, to sit and try to see themselves through their kids' eyes. Now that seems it seems harder than it sounds. But if you look, and that's really what I try to do with a father-daughter book, to understand that when your 5-year-old, your 10-year-old girl sees you walk into a room, she can assess within 15 seconds what kind of a day you've had. Are you in a good mood, a bad mood, whatever? And I'll tell you why. It's not that she cares that much about you. She cares about herself. And she needs you to see her, to look at her and say, hi, how are you? If you're in a bad mood and you ignore her, her day is ruined. Now, dad would never think about that. So if you start to see, how do my kids see me? Do they see me as an attentive guy? Do they see me as a kind person? Or do they see me as screaming all the time? Or they see me as just, never paying attention to anybody? And then you'll realize that you have an enormous impact just by the presence in your house. So that's the place that I would start. And again, I'm really big on keeping things simple, because parenting great kids is simple, but it's hard. I mean, the simplest things are the hardest things to do, aren't they?
They definitely are. You really had me there,
Oh,
because the reason I say that is because a lot of men out there, we try to be stoic. We try to be, I don't want to say tough, not tough on the kids, but tough on ourselves. And,
mhm.
we carry a lot. We carry a lot through our, carry a lot on our shoulders. And yeah, you're right. I mean, we can, my 13-year-old in particular, he's very empathetic. He can sense things, and he's like, you doing okay? It looks like you had a bad day. Even if I'm really trying purposely not
Yeah.
to show
Not
like,
the,
oh, I was,
yeah,
he still gets it.
yeah,
There's that part of me though, as a father, I'm like, well, I don't want to share with him that I had a bad day, because that's kind of weak. Like that's my idiotic default,
right.
even though I
Yeah,
know better. Right.
yeah,
So let's talk to the man right now who's maybe listening to this podcast on his way home from work, because I think coming in the front door from a tough day at work is for some men, that's the hardest part of their day. And we want it to be the most rewarding and amazing part of the day. How do we shelve those feelings of like, wow, today was a bit rough and I'm not necessarily doing the work that I truly, truly love. And I'm coming home. I got to flip on. I got to be dad now. And I want to be there for these kids, but
mhm,
I'm having some difficulty there.
yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I think that expecting yourself to be 100% engaged, oh, sorry, the 100% engaged the first half hour that you're home is unrealistic, because I think that it
Um,
takes the time to transition.
mm,
And so you really got to give yourself some slack when you're first getting home. You've got to sort of readjust from that mindset of work and the difficulty and the burden you feel to, oh, okay, here are all these kids or my wife, and they want something of me too. I just can't deal with it all. Because you have one foot in one place and one foot in another. So give yourself some time to just kind of chill. And even if you need to take a half hour after work and go for a walk before you go home, or just go a drive before you get home, just to kind of transition. And then when you get home, keep it really simple. In 5 minutes, you can sit down and look at your daughter, kindergarten, she's coloring her picture, whatever she's doing, and say, oh, honey, that looks so great. Give her a kiss on the forehead, move into the other room. Kids don't need a lot of time and a lot of your energy. A little bit goes a long way. As far as being afraid to express your feelings, first of all, you will never meet a more forgiving person in your life than your kids, because your kids need you. So if you overspeak a little or underspeak a little, share too much, share too little, it's not going to bother them nearly as much as it bothers you. And so I really think it's important that dads teach their kids how to express love, how to be affectionate, how to be attentive and listen. And a lot of that just comes through expressing your feelings. Do you need to tell your kids the mistakes you made when you're 17? No, of course not. Do you need to say, I had a really bad day, or will that hurt them? Sure. Practice it. Yeah, I had a really bad day, but you know what? It's so nice to be home, and I'm going to get over it, because you're teaching your kids that, yeah, dad, their gigantic hero who knows everything, can solve any problem, has a bad day, but guess what? You'll have a good evening. So don't be afraid to let a little bit out with your kids.
I love simplicity.
Yeah.
Do you find that most men really resonate with simplicity?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
we do.
Yeah. And they're very like, okay, well, here's my issue with my kid. Just tell me what to do. They don't want the theory. They just say, tell me what to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very simple. And I would keep it simple. Keep it simple. Like I said, with kids, you don't need lots and lots of time. You don't need to repeat yourself, particularly if you have a boy. Don't repeat yourself because boys hate that. But just show them, affection, attention, some admiration here and there and respect. And you do that on a pretty consistent basis, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. They're there, you
Mhm.
know?
What are your thoughts on, uh, guys with multiple kids?
Mhm,
And you shared a theme in the last segment here that, kids really need to feel seen,
mhm.
heard, understood. And even if it's brief, even
Yeah.
if it's just brief,
Yep.
we do something in our house kind of called the eye contact and like maybe even physical touch. So if I see one of my boys walk past me, I'll either pat him on the back, I'll give him a hug, give him a high five, something like that. Just
Mhm.
something that like, hey, I see you, even though we're not talking right now, but I see you, you see me, and we just sort of have that brief interaction. Could it be something just as simple as that? I mean, I'm not talking about that all the time. That's the only thing you do. But even when, let's just say, a man is in a really bad headspace and
Mhm.
he's having a hard time giving, is that something that we could kind of just very simply do that wouldn't take much of our time?
Absolutely. Because, like I said, you may do that twice a month for a child's life. That child will grow up to say that you did that 3 times every day of his life
Yeah.
because it expands in his mind. Why? Because it's so important and so meaningful. So
Hmm.
you don't have to spend a whole day with a child to communicate to them that you see them, you're available, you love them, and it can happen in 30 seconds. And you're absolutely right. One of the things that I think can be really helpful for dads if they really want to connect with their kids, first of all, as difficult a time as you have transitioning from being at work to home, your kids have a hard time transitioning from being sports or school to home.
Hmm.
So when they walk in the door, don't say, hey, how was your day? They don't really want to tell you. They're just like you are. They're like, just leave me alone. I need to get something to eat or whatever. So circle back around. One of the best times to really figure out what's going on in your child's life is bedtime.
Yeah.
And no matter how old they are, you just go in. I had a dad, really good dad, who would go into his son's bedroom while he was doing his homework and just sit on the floor and read a book. And at first the kid's like, what are you doing? He said, I'm just here. I just enjoy your company. Is this okay with you if I just kind of hang here while you're doing your homework? And that meant so much to that kid. Sit on the end of the kid's bed. You don't have to touch them, particularly if it's teen girl. Don't just sit there or maybe rub her feet or whatever. Hey, how are things going at school, or how's soccer going? And if you want to figure out what she's doing, but she doesn't want to tell you, then you ask what her friends are doing. You say, hey, I heard that Lucy in your class was having a hard time. How's she doing? you know and then she'll tell you, and then eventually you can get around to, and how's that working with you? Is that hard for you, or other kids in your class? Do you ever feel that way? So you can kind of come in sideways, but honestly and truly, 5 minutes at bedtime, 2-3 times a week with your kids, you're there.
You're there.
Really, you're there.
You just answered my question, because I was going to ask you about a certain situation like that. So, like I said, I have a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old. My 13-year-old will give you more detail than you can ever ask for when you ask him a question. My 12-year-old is the king of fine and good, good and fine.
Yeah,
Those are-
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and I told my wife we're really big on spending a little bit of time with each kid. Usually like 10-15 minutes per kid. Like we always joke, we're like, wow, bedtime takes an hour.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
what I did the other night is, instead of asking my 12-year-old questions, because even at bedtime, like it's for some reason he's just fine, good, good, fine. He's
yeah,
like he's like an athlete and kind of like stoic. I'm strong. I'm this.
yeah.
And he loves to draw. and I can't draw to save my life. And I told my wife, and I had no agenda or anything like that. I told my wife, I was like, I'm gonna go downstairs, say goodnight to Mason, but I think I'm just gonna draw next to him, and
Yeah.
with no agenda. And I didn't think it. And all of a sudden, we were just sitting next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, drawing, and I could not get him to stop talking.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. I was like, whoa, I didn't expect that. And just so what I told my wife, I came back upstairs. I was like, you would not believe this. I
Yeah.
was like, we just sat there and he talked my ear off. And she's like, well, do you think it had anything to do with you were in the same space and you were doing something that he really, really enjoyed?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think what you just said in this last segment really hit that home.
You're absolutely right. I think, first of all, a lot of kids who say good, fine, they really don't know what they're feeling. They're not trying to be evasive. They just, I don't know what to say, Dad. I
Yeah.
feel okay. But to realize that boys will connect with you and bond with you better by doing stuff together, by just drawing together, by going for a bike ride. Daughters will connect with people usually through talking,
Hmm.
but boys will connect by doing activities together. You're
Yeah.
kicking a soccer ball in the backyard. Conversation comes up. You're hitting baseballs. It's also important because a lot of dads, I find, make this very simple mistake, and that is they pull their kids into their world, into the stuff they like to do, but they're not willing to join their kids in stuff the kid likes to do. And the fact that you're not a drawer, but you're going to draw next to your son lets him know that you're interested in him and his drawing, not just in having him do things with you that you like to do. They feel kind of dragged along there. So that's really important.
That makes total sense. Get in their world, not
Get in
necessarily
the world.
bring him to
Get in.
ours.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, you hit upon something in another podcast that I heard, John, and that is the busyness that is today with our kids. Like, I think a lot of parents out there think their kid is going to be the next pro athlete, and they're in year-long baseball and volleyball and activities out the yin yang, like literally like 4 to 5 different activities per week and all. You shared a story and an example that you don't necessarily believe in that so much, that if we actually had more time, just instead of a coach having that time with our kids, if
Mm.
we had more of that time with our own kids,
Yeah.
that would probably be much more impactful.
Oh, sure. Because if you look at how a child's identity shapes it's through one-on-one interaction with their parent. If you think about all the people that you've known who are in their 30s or 40s who go into counseling, what do they talk about? They don't talk about a coach in baseball. They don't talk about a kid bullying them. They don't talk about they talk about their mom and dad, because the mom and dad are the ones who shape their life experience, their emotions. They shape really who that child becomes. And so every time you surrender your kid to a coach and give that coach time with him, you're giving up your time with that child where you could be shaping his identity in a very positive way. And it's so, again, this is look at life through your kid's eyes. Your child, and I know this because I've taken care of thousands of kids over 30 years. Your kids want more of you and less stuff to do.
Yeah.
Now, there are a couple different reasons. When kids are involved in so much stuff, I see this all the time. They're playing a lot of baseball. They're dancing a lot. And then parents show up, dads show up at all their events year in and year out. It's fine. It's great. I want you to show up at their events. But what happens is you do this long enough, that child begins to feel the only way I get my dad's attention is to keep doing this. So I'm afraid to stop.
Mm.
I'm afraid to stop. I can't tell you how often that happens, that they feel that they only get attention and admiration from their dads when they're performing. And dads don't mean to do this. Moms do the same thing. They don't mean to do it, but we do because we want to be really good parents, give our kids really great experiences, support them in all those experiences. But what the kid is reading is, this is really important to my dad. That's why he comes to every single game. Now, it's fine to do that stuff. I'm not saying it isn't, but we're completely out of balance. Completely out of balance. If you're never eating dinner with your kids during the week or the weekends, you're completely out of balance. You know, you have to have family time at least twice a week, preferably 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Another thing my dad made us do that I hated, Friday and Saturday nights, we had dinner as a family. Those are the worst nights in the week to have a family dinner if you're a 17-year-old girl. But he said, this is what we do as a family. This is what we do. So I'm going to be very selfish with my time with you. And I don't really remember what we said at the table, but I remember we came together as a family.
Yeah.
And if you if you keep those experiences from your kids, you rob them. You rob them of deep joy, because 90% of kids who go off to college or go off to work after high school don't do any of the stuff that they've been doing over the past 5 years. You could be running them all around the country, 12 months out of the year playing hockey. Guess what? They're going to go to college, maybe play hockey for a year or two, and they're done. It's
Hmm.
not going to be their life. So why are you surrendering you in order for, and all these life-changing experiences in order to let your kid do all that stuff? So,
Yeah.
but parents do it with the best intentions, and I understand it. I understand it. But my husband said with our kids, outside of school, you get one extracurricular activity per semester, period. And they hooted and hollered, but now as adults, they're so grateful that we, sort of forced family time on them.
Absolutely. And I love the dinner time thing. That is so sacred.
Yes.
Growing up, I kind of grew up in this sort of, I mean, everybody kind of grows up, I think, with some sort of craziness, right? But
Mhm.
that's one thing that I definitely missed out on. But when we did have it, man, it was so cool. I really, really enjoyed that. Even as a kid, I couldn't articulate that when I was like
No,
10. But
no,
looking back on it, like those are the things that I really appreciated.
you do. You feel, you understand that you're part of something,
Right.
part of a family. You're all connected. You have a responsibility to the people around the table, whether
Yeah.
you like them or whether you don't. It doesn't matter. Maybe you're having a tiff with one of them. Well, the thing to do if you're having a tiff with somebody is not spend less time, but spend more time to work it through.
Yeah.
So kids learn a lot of issues about social issues. They learn about how to interact. They learn how to belong. They learn how to care. They learn how to talk to people. And it's extremely important in this day and age when kids are on screens all the time. They're really not understanding how to have real intimacy in relationships. And the best place to start is at the dinner table.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Mm.
We're really big on in this house, no electronic devices at the dinner table. We actually are trying to completely black out 5 to 9 p.m. No
Good.
devices, but especially at dinner, like that is like
Yeah,
sacred. If anything, we have music on, but that's about it. I want to throw you just a bit of a curveball. Anytime I have like an amazing guest on like yourself, so I also host a mastermind group called the Data Edge Alliance Mastermind Community. We have 300 guys who are a part of it. Every now and again, when men are just super pumped to have an interaction, we kind of use this podcast as sort of like a call-in type
sure.
thing. So
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I'd like to bring in Scott Courtwright, who has a daughter. Great guy. He's been doing life with us for quite some time. Scott's got a question for you about daughters.
Great.
Hey, how you doing? So first, thank you for your book. It's sits on my top of my nightstand at all times, and lots of pages and post-it notes. And I couldn't agree more about the family time at dinner. The only thing we have on the table are table topics, and I found that that is by far the place where we connect the deepest and the best. Uh,
Hmm.
my question to you is: my daughter's 10, and I have, or she's going to be turning 11. I've loved everything about every year that she has, the princess mode and all the different phases that she's gone through, introducing her to all the Marvel movies earlier than I should have. But
Yeah.
as I'm looking forward to her turning 11, I'm starting to sense her independence coming around. Is there anything I should be thinking about more as a dad, and how my relationship with her changes?
Yeah, great question. First of all, as she's heading into puberty, she's going to be very uncomfortable about herself. She'll become very insecure. If you look at most, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls stand, they sort of cover their tummies and they hunch over because they're feeling very badly about themselves. It's just kind of part of life. There will be a day when you walk into a room with her and you go to give her a big bear hug and she stands there like a telephone pole with spikes all over it saying, "Dad, get away from me. I can't stand you." That has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with her. So don't get your feelings hurt. You'll feel her push away and you will read that as she doesn't need me, she doesn't want me, but that is not what she's saying. So don't misread her. What she needs from you now is going to be very different. She needs you to teach her how to be a young woman, to teach her what to expect from men. So you're going to have to change the way you touch her. She's not going to sit on your lap anymore. If she's uncomfortable with physical touch, you touch her on the shoulders. You don't hug her in public. Again, I would take that time to go into her bedroom at night a couple times a week, sit on the end of her bed and say, "Hey, we just haven't talked in a while or connected. How's school? How's this?" And if she wants to talk, great. If she doesn't want to talk, that's okay too. Keep going after her. But it's really important during 12, 13, and 14, the rest of her high school years, that you let her know you're the man in her life and she's going to be interested in other men. But your job is to guide her and to help her and to really make sure that she's dating the right kind of guys. Now, this sounds hyper controlling, but the reason I say this is because teenage girls need help. They have no clue how boys interact or what boys are thinking or feeling. Also important, and your wife is going to hate this, but it's important for you to have a strong say in how your daughter dresses. Okay, you don't want her going to school when she's 13 and 15 showing as much skin as possible. And you say, "You can't go out of the house looking like that." And your wife may say, no, you don't understand how girls dress. You say, "I do understand how they dress, but I'm her dad. And it's not okay for me to send my precious daughter to school knowing how a 15, 17-year-old boy is going to look at her." So what I'm saying, I guess, is don't back away, pursue her more. Let her know you're there to have her back and protect her and watch over her. Women will say that's not important at all, but it's extremely important because girls want to be protected. They want to know somebody's there who has their back. So be bold in that sense. Friends will think you're crazy. Your wife may say you're controlling, but don't worry, just keep on doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Great.
Scott, thanks so much for the question, brother. Really appreciate that. I'd like to go to Chris Lesso next. Chris, I'm going to unmute you, or why don't you unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Meg. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Chris?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the fantastic output in all the books you've given to all of us fathers around the world. It's incredible. And I just had a quick question on, well, my daughter's 3, and I know that I'm being watched in the way that one day far in the future, the relationship of like who our fathers are to a daughter and who they end up with, marrying and kind of look for as partners. And I know there's a lot of different phases, like the phase my daughter's in now, in the teenage phase. And just wondered if you could speak on that, because I'm trying to be the best model, even as young as she is now. But I'm, aware of those times I fall short and, lose my sense of humor, lose myself as a good role model. So just wondered if you could speak on that connection.
Sure. Well, I will say this. I'm sorry. I will say this, that you're probably doing a much better job than you think you are, just the fact that you're here and just the fact that you're listening to a podcast on how to be a better dad. So I think you need to give yourself more kudos than you already are. Here's the really cool thing about a dad and a daughter. she can be your princess until she's 55 or until she's whenever, until you die or she dies. And I'd say this to every dad, women take one man to their grave, and it's their dad. She's really lucky she may take a good husband, but her connection with you is going to be she'll want that to be so strong for so many years that she'll want to maintain that connection if she's 3 or 13 or 33. That's the great news. A mother-son relationship, they can't have that. The son has to pull away from his mother and say, I need to figure out what it means to be a man. But a daughter doesn't have to do that. So she's going to take her cues from you all throughout her life. And so you need to teach her what it's like to have a good man talk to her. What kind of tone of voice do you use? What words do you use? Do you yell? Do you swear? Or do you never do that in your family? Do you treat her respectfully? Do you pay attention to her? And do you not ignore her? Because all of those things she'll internalize. And as she gets older, that's exactly what she'll look like when she begins to date. Now, something scary for you dads out there. When your daughter starts to date, even though she may tell you or show you that she feels very estranged from you and you're a geek and you don't know anything, the minute she gets with that other boy, you will be front and center in her mind, because if he doesn't talk like you, and he doesn't drive like you, and he doesn't, use your tone of voice, he's out of there. So she intuitively compares you to him. And because you're her standard for what male love looks like, what male trust looks like, what male respect looks like. And so she'll be so familiar with that when she meets the opposite of that, she will have no problem going, my dad would never treat me like that. And off she goes. Because as we get older, we tend to gravitate towards the familiar, not what we want, but the familiar. I see girls who are abused by their dads grow up to have abused husbands. Why? It's the familiar. So really, the good news for you is you can be very consistent in loving your daughter, showing affection, spending time with her, connecting with her. And as I said, keep it really simple. But there really shouldn't be a time, even during her teen years, when she's going to need to pull away, because that little girl, every little girl, every teenager, every adult woman wants two things: either more healing from your relationship with your dad or more time with your dad. That's it. So as soon as she gets older, she always wants you and your time.
Chris, I don't know about you, brother. I'm just gonna speak for you, but that definitely answered the question. That was awesome. Meg, I want to be very respectful of your time. How are we doing on time with you?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just take one more question. We have 32 guys on this, and we've got hands up all over the place. But I'm gonna, just to be respectful of your time, I'm gonna take one more, and that's from Jeff Hemmer. Jeff Hemmer is a longtime friend and masterminder as well. He actually wrote the book Man Up, and he did it from a place of spirituality. So the title of the book is phenomenal, and he's got 6 kids.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I'm going to let him step in here. Jeff, can you talk?
Dr. Meeker, it's really an honor to speak to you.
Oh, thank you.
So we have 6 kids, and number 7 is coming in June. So we have.
You're an animal, man.
Yeah. Boy, brave. Yeah.
Well, we like the first 6, so we have no reason to expect we won't find a great.
Won't like the second. Yeah. Good for you.
So we have 4 girls and 2 boys. And I think in some ways raising girls to be strong, independent women seems an easier task in my mind than raising boys to be strong, independent men. Because I'm not a woman, so I don't expect my daughters to be little copies of me.
Mhm.
But I do kind of have this expectation that my boys should emulate me as their father, and I don't want to put those kinds of expectations on them. I want to give them the freedom to grow up in the world and explore the world sort of on their own terms. I want them to grow up to be good, courageous, sacrificial men,
Mhm.
but I don't need them to be copies of me to sort of affirm me in my role as their father. How do I give them the freedom to be their own men as they grow up and as they mature?
Wow.
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I think you have to remember, Jeff, your daughters and your sons, if they have a good relationship with you, they will want to emulate you. They just will. Because in their eyes, again, if you have a good relationship, you are larger than life. You're the strong guy. You're the smart guy. You're the one with all the answers. You're the guy who loves them more than anybody else. So you're huge, which incidentally, they don't feel like that about their mother. It's neither good nor bad. They believe that moms have to love them because mom can't go anywhere. You know, if you don't even feel like your mother loves you in life, you might as well not live, because it all starts with mom. But in their eyes, their father doesn't have to love them, which is interesting. Kids feel that way. So how do you, because you're absolutely right, it's easier to encourage a daughter to be a strong daughter. I just wrote a book called Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, which just came out a month ago, which I like, of course. As far as your sons will emulate you. What you want to emulate to them is strong character. And there's nothing wrong with talking with them about that. For instance, once a month, as long as our kids were growing up, my husband took them, and we all went as a family, and we worked every Sunday evening in the soup kitchen at a local church. And our kids loved that. Even our son enjoyed that. But what they saw in their dad was not his profession and not his sports, but his heart. They saw that he wanted to serve other people. So they're adults now, and guess what? They're all serving other people. So I would encourage you, when your son does something that you like, character-wise, he shows courage, he shows tenacity, he shows perseverance, he shows patience or kindness, you remark on that and you say, man, I can't believe, I know that algebra is so hard for you, but I so admire your perseverance. That's so important. You know, that's something that I've learned and I had to teach myself over the years, or it's something that I struggle with, but I look at you and I know I can get better at it. So talk about character. Don't talk about stuff that you do. And that will free them up to use that character to find their call in life, if you will, or their passion or their sweet spot. You're not going to be able to say, okay, let's see, are you a good writer, or are you good at baseball, or are you good at this, or if you're good at that? But if you talk to them and be an example to them of strong character, you don't have to worry about anything else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That really helps a lot. Puts things into beautiful perspective. So thank you.
You bet. And also, just FYI, a lot of kids end up, boys particularly, doing what their dads did. And it happened like I did. My dad never pushed me to go to medical school. He never said, oh, that would be a great thing to do. He just sort of let us go and said, you know, I expect you to work hard. I expect you to tell the truth. I expect you to be respectful to other people. And doing that led each of us kids to land where we landed. And it just happened that my brother and I ended up going into medicine. But again, my dad never said you better do that. So if you just sort of let your sons know, my job as your dad is to help, to link arms with you and help you figure out where you're supposed to land in life. I don't know where that is, but you'll figure that out as you go on. And then you work on his character. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Thank you.
I think that I got to tell you, Meg, this is out of 500 episodes that we've done. This has probably been by far one of my favorite just
Oh, bless your heart.
no, I'm serious. Just
Oh,
the
good.
energy, the information, even the chemistry that
Yeah.
we've had talking. Um, I want to give you an opportunity to share, obviously your new book that's out, and I want you to share some of the new resources that you have out. I'm
Yeah.
giving these guys, all 28 who are still on the call, I want to give them just a quick heads up that after Meg is done sharing, what I'd like for you to do is just come off mute and just, what we're going to do, Meg, is we're going to love on you a little bit.
Oh,
And
thanks.
I would just love for these guys to maybe share within one word or phrase, just something that they truly appreciate about you in this interview. So I'm going to hand it back over to you here, and just go ahead and tell us all about your resources, your new book, and where we can find everything.
Sure. Before I do that, one sentence. A lot of dads may be fearful or worried or anxious about their role as a dad, but know this: you are wired with everything you need to be a good dad, to be a great dad. So always know that. Meeker Parenting Community is something that I'm starting online where I can engage with people, I can answer questions, I can write a short little mini course on, how to talk to your kids about sex or whatever, that I really strongly encourage men to check out. We have quite a few men in there. Meeker Parenting Meeker Parenting Community. And then my last book just came out, Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture. I really encourage dads in particular to read, because it lets you see what your daughters are up against that you may not know, and that you probably won't believe, because believe it or not, you're older, than a lot older, and you may not have dealt with this kind of stuff growing. Things are changing so fast in the past 5 years. So, the whole transgender thing, parents like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Help. So that's where I'm going to give a lot of that help, is in the book and in my Meeker Parenting Community.
Well, we're definitely going to have all those links in the show notes for the listeners. So not to worry, guys. I'll have the links and in the footer of the show. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to allow these guys just to kind of slowly come off mute and just share just some appreciation for Dr. Meg Meeker today. So I welcome you guys to do that.
Meg, you have such a strong North Star of wanting to help people. You can just feel it, and in your words and your books, and your just overall mission for that. So I thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I really appreciate about you is how you really affirm and build up the strong men that's inside of us. And so I really find that affirming. Thank you.
Good.
Meg, I appreciate the simplicity in your answers. I can't wait to take all this into action, and so my son can appreciate it too. Thank you.
Good.
Meg, if I could describe one word, it would be relentless. You saw an issue in the world, and you decided you were going to put your thoughts out there and your opinions and your knowledge, and you're giving resources that are going to change generations. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am relentless. And I did get that from my dad. I just have a tenacity that, if you believe something is right and good, you go at it. Yeah.
That's right. Anybody
Meg,
else?
Meg, I just wanted to thank you for your belief in dads, and in a society that just belittles dads in their role, and especially on like shows and whatnot. I just appreciate your willingness to help dads and to just love on them. And it's much appreciated.
Well, certainly. It's pretty easy. Thank you, Eric.
Right along with Eric is just, appreciate how you celebrate this masculine strengths within us fathers, and how you also are courageous with your faith, and not afraid to bring that into the mix. I really appreciate that about you.
You bet. Thank you.
Meg is a dad who has a lot of children with trauma. It's wonderful to have somebody who can give us the fundamentals to make sure that we're starting from a right place and we can help them grow through their pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. And I will tell you, a good dad changes the trajectory of a child's life, particularly when they've had trauma. It's enormous. So thank you so much.
I'm Yeah, Meg, thank you for your time. I was also gonna just say that this was very eye-opening. Just some of the comments you made definitely gave me a different perspective on ways to think about things. Specifically, your comments, around sports and activities and things like that. That's things that I've had in the back of my head, but to actually kind of hear it, that's really eye-opening.
Good. Good.
Joe Courtney, you can be our last one, brother. Take us home.
Dr. Meeker, it's an honor to talk to you. I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time. I'm also a fellow Michigander.
Oh, good.
I just wanted to say thank you for the books that you've written and for breaking everything down into almost just very basic answers that fathers are looking for, especially with myself raising two young boys. And one thing that's always stuck out is that, when they tackle you, that's their way of hugging and showing affection. And, it's something that my wife and I have read your books and have learned a lot from. So thank you.
Good. Well, I'm so encouraged that you all are encouraged. Stay encouraged. The world will not encourage you, but you're tough. You're tough. You can encourage yourselves and just stay strong. It's a tough world, but and I honestly believe, fatherlessness in our country is the most important problem in our country, and that if we could get dads, even 5% more dads, to get in their homes or engage more in their families, we'd live in a different country. And I really mean that. There's a lot on your shoulders and you can make so much impact on our country. And I want to be the one that just kind of pushes on you a little bit to do that and to stand up and encourage you and say, trust your instincts. You have male instincts. They're not female instincts. Good. Use them.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being so giving with your time. And I appreciate all of the mastermind guys jumping on today. We had a full house. They just wanted to hear your message today. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you for really leading the charge on a lot of these messages for us men. We truly need it, and we truly appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. I appreciate prayers of you all, because there are a whole lot of women out there who hate me. It's okay, but I really appreciate this time with you.
Same here.